So last year we ordered 60 baby chicks for our homestead, and at the time we had no chicken coop built, we had no brooder, we didn't have anything set up or ready to go for these chickens. And so they were coming in about a month's time, and so I had to figure out a plan for a brooder and for a coop. And today we're gonna hop in the barn and I'm gonna show you the design I came up with for a chicken brooder. It was really easy, really simple, basic design, low cost, and so let's go take a tour of that. Alright, so here's our chicken brooder. And so I had never built a chicken brooder before. The closest thing we had done was we raised chickens in our suburban home before. We had a backyard chicken coop and we had just a box in our living room that we raised our little baby chicks in. And so we kind of outgrew that here with the 60 chicks that we ordered last year, and so we needed something a little bit bigger. So I started searching on like Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for just any large structures that I could find, mainly looking at like crates and things like that, that might be a suitable thing to build a chicken brooder out of. And so I came across this giant crate, and it looked like an awesome option, so I went for it. It was like 20 bucks. I showed up at this dude's house, and this was sitting in his garage, and I kind of wanted to ask him what it was for, because I have no idea what you order that comes in like this gigantic of a crate, but I didn't. But anyways, so I basically took this crate and turned it into our brooder. And so let me open it up. I'll give you the tour here. So it's basically a really simple design, and I just tried to work with like any scrap materials, things that we had. So like I said, the crate itself was like 20 bucks. Aside from that, I built like all these frame pieces essentially that just kind of make up the brooder itself, where the chicks actually go into. And so you can see I have a bottom one and a top one. So we actually had some meat chickens and some layer chickens, and I kind of wanted to raise them separately. And so I decided to go up top and build a double decker and kind of maximize the space, which makes things a little cramped in there, but it worked out just fine for raising our chicks for last year. And so so basically out of like just a 1x trim kind of scrap wood, I built these frames, and then I used hardware cloth and just stapled that to it, and they're pretty solid. I really like using hardware cloth in a brooder situation like this versus chicken wire, because hardware cloth just has a little bit more structural integrity or strength to it. It kind of holds things together better. So when you're kind of working with these frames and moving them up and down, it just kind of holds everything together. So essentially, I just had a staple gun that I stapled all this wood together with, stapled the hardware cloth to the frames, and just kind of built it from there. And so that's the basic design. A couple other options there are. I know that this is a very unique crate. You're probably not going to go online and find a crate just like this. But there are a lot of other kind of smaller, more rectangular crates that just sit on the ground, and those are also a really good option too. I was looking into getting one of those, but you could basically just find a pre-made wooden crate, and then just build something basic like this to put on top of it as a top cover, and that would work just fine. Or the same concept, but you can also find like water troughs, like a galvanized livestock trough for animals, and you can find those even used sometimes on Craigslist or Marketplace for not that much money. And so those are also a really good option for a brooder. And so so that's basically that. And then in terms of what you need to get going with the brooder, since it is outside, if you're inside you can control the temperatures a little bit more. If you're outside, you'll want some heat lamps on the chicks to keep things warm. You'll want to figure out a system for how to raise and lower the heat lamps depending on how much heat the chickens need. If they're like really spread out, they're getting too much heat. If they're really huddled together close to the lamp, they're not getting enough. So you can adjust those up and down. I just put some like little hooks up on the bottom, And then I also put a zip tie around it just to hold it in place really good. You don't want, you know, a really hot heat lamp to come crashing down on your baby chicks. That wouldn't be good. And so heat lamps, you also need bedding. So the standard bedding for a chicken brooder is pine shavings, which you could find pretty much anywhere. Any farm store is going to have a big bag of pine shavings. I didn't have any this year. I ran out, and so what we're using is just straw. I had a couple bales of straw, and I think will work just fine. Basically, you just need something that's absorbent and will kind of absorb the moisture to keep things dry for the baby chicks in there. I've also heard that you can use sand, like a really coarse sand. The thing that I don't like about that is that you can't throw it onto the compost pile. Both the pine shavings and the straw are really good options just to compost afterwards. So yeah, so bedding. You'll also need a waterer. So I like to just use these plastic ones. I've had bad luck with the galvanized ones and them rusting out. So I like just a plastic water. And we also like to add a little bit of apple cider vinegar, just a couple of glugs of apple cider vinegar into every time we refill the water. That helps, since apple cider vinegar is a fermented food, it helps with gut health for the chicken and it helps their digestion. And it also can act as an electrolyte for the chicks as they're young and growing. And then also you'll want a feeder for the chickens in there so they have access to food and to water at all times. So just a basic feeder. One of the things you'll want to be aware of with the feed for like the chick starter feed that you're going to find in the store is that there's usually a medicated option and a non-medicated option. We like to just go with the non-medicated option, and we've had that's been fine for us. But it's just good to be aware of that, because if you are wanting to raise your chickens more naturally or organically, you'll want to look out for that and try and find something that's more organic or natural and non-medicated versus the medicated one. But that's really all you need equipment-wise to get going with the chickens. So another thing that you want to be aware of is predators, and just making sure that your brooder is really secure from predators. That's one reason why I really liked this crate. It's surrounded on all 6 sides, and nothing could really get in there to go after the chickens. If you do have just like a crate or a water trough with like a frame on top of it, you may want to keep that weighted down somehow. Just like maybe put a brick or 2 on there, just so it stays weighted down, so that nothing is gonna pry that open and get in there and get your baby chicks. So yeah, so that's basically the tour. It's really simple. It's easy to yeah, just use whatever materials you have on hand. Go find a crate or something like that on Craigslist to get going with. And yeah, it doesn't have to be anything super fancy for your chicks. So really the main thing is you just want to make sure your chickens are safe and they're dry and they're warm and that they have access to food and water. And that's basically the purpose of the brooder. And so we are getting our order of chicks tomorrow. We're getting a round of meat chickens for this year for our homestead. And so we actually created another video on our experience raising both Cornish Cross and Freedom Ranger meat chickens last year. And our recommendation on that might surprise you. So we're going to link up to that video next, and we'll see you in that video.